abstained yesterday.
You ready, Jimmy? Steve, you ready, Jimmy? Oh, yeah. Okay. Good afternoon. It is now 5:12 p.m. on Tuesday, May the 7th, and I'll call the CRA meeting to order, please. Any deletions or deferrals? None. Madam Clerk, you want to call roll for us? Would you call the roll, please?
Board Member Fairclough McCormick. Here. Board Member Maldonado.
Here.
Board Member Shelley.
There.
Board Member Wallman. Absent. Board Member Williams.
Here.
Vice Chairman Burgess.
Here.
Chairman Bateman. Absent.
Tab 1, approval of the minutes for the March 2nd, 2013 CRA board meeting.
Move it.
And April the 17th, 2013 CRA board workshop minutes.
Move it.
Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is card number 793, CRA Commercial Enhancement Grant. I'll entertain a motion. Moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Staff report, please.
Staff recommends that the CRA Board approve the resolution authorizing the disbursement of commercial enhancement grant funds to the following applicant: Miami Beach Youth and Family Services, Inc., 326 Northwest 3rd Avenue, 4th Street, Homestead, Florida. Applicant is eligible to receive up to $25,000 of commercial enhancement grant funds. On March 21st, 2013, the Southwest Advisory Committee recommended the approval of the Miami Beach Youth and Family Services, Inc.'s grant application. On October 11th, 2011, the CRA Board approved resolution CRA 2011-10-14 adopting the guidelines for the CRA Commercial Enhancement Program.
Questions from the council? I will open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak in support, for or against? Hearing no public comments, I will now close the public comments. Any final comments from the council? Hearing none, seeing none.
Board Member Maldonado.
Yes.
Board Member Shelley.
Yes.
Board Member Williams.
Yes.
Board Member Fairclough McCormick. Yes. Vice Chairman Burgess.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Next item, CRA number 790, CRA Emergency Home Repair Grant Approval, tab number 3.
Move it.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Staff report, please.
Staff recommends the CRA Board approve the resolution authorizing the disbursement of grant funds to the following applicant of the CRA Emergency Home Repair Grant Program: Mr. and Mrs. Kevin Further, 201 Southwest 15th Terrace, Homestead, Florida, 33030. Applicant is eligible to receive up to $10,000 for emergency home repairs. On March 21st, 2013, the Southwest Advisory Committee reviewed and recommended the aforementioned application for approval by the Board. On May 17th, 2010, the CRA Board approved resolution CRA 2010-05-05, creating a residential emergency home repair grant program.
Any questions from the council? Hearing none, seeing none, I will now open the public hearing. Any questions from the public or support, for or against? Hearing none, seeing none, I will now close the public comment. Any last comments or questions from the council? Roll call, please.
Board Member Fairclough McCormick.
Yes.
Board Member Shelley.
Yes.
Board Member Williams.
Yes.
Board Member Maldonado.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Burgess.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item, tab 4, car number 792, landscaping grant disbursement. I'll entertain a motion.
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Staff report, please.
Staff recommends the CRA Board approve the resolution authorizing the disbursement of grant funds to the following applicant of the CRA Landscaping Grant Program: Mr. and Mrs. Kevin Further, 201 Southwest 15th Terrace, Homestead, Florida, 33030. Applicant Applicant will eligible to receive up to $5,000 for landscaping improvements. On March 21st, 2013, the Southwest Advisory Committee reviewed and recommended the application for approval by the board. On May 17th, 2010, the CRA board approved resolution CRA 2010-05-06, creating a residential landscaping grant program.
Questions from the council? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll just make a comment. I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Williams and the Southwest Committee for, I think they do a great job for us and make our job up here as a whole easier. They bring good recommendations to us, and the staff, thank you for the thoroughness that you guys do in making sure and going through these and making sure everything's followed correctly and making sure that the procedures are done. So it makes our job a lot easier. Thank you. Anyone, public comment, for or against? Hearing none, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any final comments from the council? Hearing none, seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Next item, tab number 5, car number 796, CRA 2012-2013 budget amendment. Staff report, or motion?
Move it.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second it.
Moved and seconded. Staff report, please.
Staff recommends that the CRA board approve the attached resolution on the CRA amended budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2012 and ending September 30th, 2013, increasing the total budget amount to $4,169,761. On January 23rd, 2012, the CRA board held a workshop to prioritize its capital projects for fiscal year 2012. The board gave staff direction to allocate $5.3 million in funding to 8 capital projects. The money for 4 of these projects were not totally encumbered by September 30th, and the monies became part of the CRA fund balance. This budget amendment allows the allocation of CRA fund balance to these specific projects. The projects are West Homestead Elementary, $775,000, blood removal balance of $213,107, and the remaining balance of $100,293 will be allocated for miscellaneous grant projects and office equipment.
Questions from the council?
I have a question
Ms.
for the chair.
Yes.
When you say miscellaneous, is it working? The miscellaneous ground improvements. What is that?
We're putting some more money into the ground maintenance account line. We've had some requests for additional planters and that sort of thing. We're going to pay for that. And we also want to make sure that if we have to have more cuttings than we currently have, that we have enough money in there that we could do that if the board so decides at a later date. Right, no.
Any other questions? I'll now open the questions to the public. Anyone with concerns in support or against? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any final comments from the council? Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
No. No.
No. Thank you. Next item. Tab number 6, car number 803, CRA not-for-profit grant program fiscal year 2012-2013. Entertain a motion?
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Staff report, please.
CRA staff recommends the CRA board approve the resolution authorizing the disbursement of funds based on the recommendations made by the not-for-profit grant committee. The recommendations are as follows: Art South, $20,000; Fresh Start Family Services, $10,000; Homestead Ministry, $35,000; Greater Atlanta Youth for Christ Kicks, $35,000; Regional Dairy, $20,000; South Bend Legacy, $20,000; Recount, $10,000.
Questions from the council?
Yes, plenty of questions.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you so much. Let me thank, before I go into my questioning, Mr. McCormick for her stellar leadership with the process, and also staff for what they do to make this process seamless. I just got a couple philosophical questions that I wrestle with, and I listened to every audio tape that there was of the meetings that was had at each location or each site visit and all of that. And you know, my question has to do with a lot my ideas of the programming aspect of it. And I think I shared this before. I have a problem with some of the grants that's allocated, because in studying the applications and all of that, quite a few of them dealt with salaries and the 35% that we looked at to make sure or that it's only capped at 35%. But I'm looking for more of the programming aspect, how much the dollars are going into the actual program for the community. And my concern is that some of the grants don't really speak to what my concerns are or what I really thought they would be. And so I know the board, some of the board members are like 3-year veterans on the board. And my issue is that I felt that some of the monies that were appropriated to certain instances that, you know, the full $35,000 was given, I didn't really see a connection on how that would be developed into redevelopment of the community. In sharing with the mission of the CRA, I just did not see, you know, some of that. Then there were questions about some of the programs. You know, some of them, they target Florida City's children, they target places outside of the CRA. So my question is, how many of these dollars, or these grant dollars that we're allotting to some of these programs, how many persons are there serving within the CRA area?
Each program serves a lot of people. I don't have a amalgamation of all of those numbers put together. I do know for the drop-in, you know, they tell us that they could have between 20 and 25, you know, the fresh start. We have weed and seed, you know, sometimes that program fluctuates. So I don't have that aggregate number right now. I can get it to you. It's just I don't want to give you a full number and it might be accurate.
Well, that would be my concern, is because, and then how do you all monitor or track whether the money stays within the geographical area within the CRA? Because there were some questions or comments from the board that they asked, you know, are your kids from the CRA? And I heard some say, well, Florida City areas, and yes, as far as we know, well, if they're over the program itself, sure, then they should know exactly how many kids that they are attracting and what location that they're in. And then my other issue is, do they know the boundaries of the CRA? Do they know exactly what the boundaries are of the CRA? Because that's my biggest issue with these grants and how some of the dollars were allocated towards that. So I'd like to hear some feedback from my colleagues, but on some of the grant applications, I just can't understand how they came up with the dollar amount, and then why we don't have the numbers to back up the persons that they are gearing towards, or the money should be allocated.
Last year, after the grant process, we came back with a series of recommendations to the board. And if you recall, we discussed that the board, and also for the tapes, the board really struggles with, you know, what they feel is the mission of the CRA, how those grant applicants can best meet those needs. We brought us some recommendations, and the board will require the 35% of the grant, only 35% can go to salaries, administrative salaries. Then we put in a requirement, and last year this requirement wasn't in, that you had to have an office within the CRA and within the Homestead city limits. private, you could have your organization have its office in Florida City, but as long as you serve populations in the CRA, you could apply. Last year, they were a little bit more restrictive. You had to have your office in the CRA, and then you had to offer services to the population. You had to have your office in the city of Homestead, you had to serve the population in the CRA. The majority of those applicants, I believe, all of them, their office is in the CRA boundary, except for maybe one. The population that they target does have CRA residents. We don't have a complete log of the residents, but the requirement is that they only exclusively offer services to CRA residents, and it's just that they had to offer services. Now, at the end of this process, we're going to have another output meeting, and we're going to bring back some other recommendations from the board too. And I think at that point, any changes that you'd like to make as a board to the program as a whole, we can have a real in-depth discussion and look at if the board feels they want to prioritize certain types of organizations, only certain types of programs, and we can come back and maybe get a little bit more focus as a group. But as far as what the requirements were put in last year, the applicants did follow those regulations.
Right, and what I'm saying is, some of these applicants we funded last year.
Yes, sir.
So at some point, they should have some type of trigger mechanism to see how many did they serve within the last fiscal year of the CRA, and then those numbers in which they, and I understand that some of them, their programs are different than what they were funded for last year. For instance, Fresh Start is dealing more with IT this year.
Right.
How does that, with the 25 or 35 persons he said he may receive in his program, that's one a day or however, how does that benefit the CRA? The IT program, how does that, and then what he is trying to do, and I'm not trying to single applicant out, I'm having a struggle with the process by which we formulate these numbers, and how do we keep track as a CRA to make sure that dollars are being utilized the way we have, wanted them to be within the scope of the scope of the mission of the CRA.
We'll request a report on how they spent their dollars if they got money in the prior year. However, we didn't make it a requirement that they give us a log of how many CRA residents they've helped. Now, that's something that they can put into the program moving forward, but it's not something that we requested in this past year. So we didn't include that.
Are the board members, do they know the boundaries of the CRA?
Excuse me?
The board members. The board members of the committee?
Yes, they do.
I will hear what my colleagues have to say, but I have some other follow-ups.
Mr. Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo some of his concerns, and I think that after the last distribution of funds, there were recommendations made by the board to us, and then we somewhat discussed those recommendations, and then we moved forward. And I think it would bode well for us to have some sort of specific workshop on this particular programming. Now that this is our third year doing this, I think we've learned a lot of lessons on what works, what doesn't work. I think we're realizing, some of the pitfalls as far as, making sure we monitor and we carry out the effectiveness of the CRA. So I personally would like to see us evaluate this maybe after the recommendations from the current board, the committee board, and then actually have a workshop versus just having this itemized under a normal CRA agenda, because I think it's something that needs to be focused on. I think it's something that needs a lot of discussion so that we can flesh these ideas out, because if it gets just put on a normal agenda, especially if it's a hefty agenda, it just gets glossed over and maybe it doesn't get the attention it should get. So I know I personally would like to flesh it out a little bit more, maybe have a more in-depth discussion with my colleagues on things we may or may not be doing right, or we maybe find out we're doing everything just fine, we're happy with the program, and we move forward, but at least we've had the conversation so that we feel like we've done what we should do.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
I would just like to echo some of the sentiments from my colleagues. Serving as the liaison for this board, I am there just to maintain the integrity of the process, but I can't really weigh in on the decisions that the volunteers make, and I thank them for their service. But I have some concerns as well with the distribution of some of the funds. I feel as if once we distribute the funds, kind of laissez-faire. There's no monitoring process to ensure that the funds are being expended and utilized to the extent that they requested in their applications. I know we require, well, not require, but we ask them to provide a report at the end, but I feel we need more teeth in that to ongoing progress monitoring to ensure that those funds are being effectively used. And as for Fresh Start Family Services, as one of my colleagues had mentioned, the volunteer committee has some concerns about the amount of residents that come in to utilize the service, but they ultimately opted to provide them those Fresh Start funding. And I had some concerns about, like, the mentoring program. How do we know the effect? How can we quantify or see the effectiveness of this mentoring program if we're not there to see that they're actually doing what they say that they're going to do? So I thank you for your interest in coming back to flesh out the process to ensure that every year is a better year, because right now we still need some fine-tuning to do.
Thank you. Any further questions from council?
Well,
Yes, Mr. Williams.
well, no, I've had a turn, but
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Williams.
yeah, okay, thank you. I guess in just hearing the two brief comments from my colleagues, how would the money be expended? Would they have to submit reimbursements? How are we going to expend the dollars?
This is a one-time, right, we give it to them and then, once this is approved, we process. We will,
Okay, this is what I have a problem with, because I think if we are going to be, very responsible and be fiduciary in our responsibility with these grant dollars, I feel that, and even though the process has gone on, but I feel in order to really support this, that there ought to be some check and balances in place. And that I believe that those, if they're going to do what they're going to do, that way we have a way of monitoring if they're going to do the program the way they said they were going to do it. But if we give them all the money up front, with no expenditures, nothing to follow up, to say, to monitor, it could be our way of monitoring to make sure that they're going through the process in which they have outlined in their grant application. And I feel that it will be not responsible for us to issue them all the monies at one time, because I have a lot of concerns as if how the money will be spent. And if we're going to have to wait till a whole nother year to see if it was spent right, then we are just as liable as the grant persons, because we didn't have any checks and balances in place. So what I'm trying to do is insert some type of checks and balances in place, where there's some type of reimbursements. They submit what they've done through whatever the hours or however, but then that is monitored through that process, and then by that, then we're able to, I feel a little bit more comfortable than just voting and giving them what you all think they should deserve.
I do remember that this came up with the committee. It's a conversation that we did have. And we're looking at the county supports nonprofits. It's on a reimbursement basis. Now we have a much larger structure to review, pay applications and requests and that sort of thing. But this is something that the committee itself has struggled with. And I think it's something that they want to discuss. If this is something that you want to move forward with in this cycle, I think we need to have a discussion on what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do with the regulations that we have.
Well, we are the legislative body, and if there's any of my colleagues that have some unwavering views about it, I'm not saying to deny the applicants of what they have worked hard to do. I'm just trying to make sure that the monies have been expended in which they said that they are going to do. If we do not, we have no way of monitoring until everything is done. And I don't think that is a way it should be. And so I'm having these last-minute reservations, not about the applicant, or what they are going to do, but how the CRA is going to keep track of it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think the question I would have here is if that's the direction of the board, then I think, unless, Rick, you have an objection, we probably should table the item, come back to you with a recommendation on how we would monitor this, what kind of structure we put in place, and what kind of resources that we'd need. We'd need to determine within the staff whether they're capable of doing this kind of monitoring. If not, if there's going to be costs associated with the monitoring, then we're just going to need to fully disclose that to you and make sure that you're comfortable with whatever monitoring system the staff recommends. But they're going to need a little time to do some research and figure out what's the best way to handle something like this.
Mr. Williams, sir.
Yes.
You through, sir?
Yeah, I'm done for right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything Councilwoman Williams said as far as the process and accountability. What I'm wrestling with, though, is the fact that we have established this procedure and these policies, and that these particular not-for-profits have gone through our process and our procedures, and now they're being held up and saying, wait a minute, we're going to change the rules. And so I have a little bit of a concern there, because every year we've kind of delayed the process, or we've taken longer than we've said, in order to facilitate these things. And so that's my biggest concern. I agree with in principle what he's saying, and if we can find some way to incorporate that into this cycle, that'd be great. But at the same time, I don't want to see us where it's another month, and then another month, and the next thing you know, we're backing all the way back up into where the next cycle is supposed to be starting, and we still haven't distributed the funds. And so for me, there's a fairness issue here, there's a process issue, and that if they all had the rules before they applied based on those rules, and now for us to change the rules midstream, I think that's a little unfair for these organizations who have budgeted or who have planned for this, especially now that they've been listed as the recipients. So that's my biggest concern. I agree with what he says. I definitely think we need to address it going forward next year for sure. I'm 100% clear on that. But I do have a little bit of a concern as far as now backing up and applying these rules backwards instead of forward. I just have a concern there. I'm wrestling with that.
Yes, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. What I'm saying is how we distribute the funds. If what they have put into the application process, then it should not be hard for them to make a small adjustment on how they're going to receive the funds. They're already recipients of it, yes, but it is up to us as this body to go forward with it, or these are just recommendations, and it is up to us to go forward with it or not. And if in the process that I find that there could be a flaw, that there could be something that we can make sure that we can tighten up on before the whole process is over with, then I'm not going to put that on next year when I know it probably could be fixed now. And so that's my major issue and concern with it.
Just a follow-up question to that? Yeah.
I'll follow up after.
Okay, Mr. Shaw, go ahead. Back to his procedural issue or question. As far as what they've applied for, is there a way to look at their application to say they applied to, to X, Y, or Z? And so therefore, if they had the plan to if they needed the distribution up front in bulk sum in order to accomplish their goal based on what they've applied for, will we be able to determine that and make sure that we can get that distribution to them with the monitoring in place? Just as if it was used for multiple things throughout the year, I guess you need to look at the applications and find out, is this something that's possible? Because that's my concern. If it's something that's easily, you can look at it and say, yes, they needed, every 3 months they needed a distribution and they could accomplish their goal, then I think that would be fine. We'd have the accountability and it wouldn't affect their ability to function. But at the same turn, if they do need it up front, is there a way that they can justify that without causing a huge problem and shutting down the purpose? So that would be my question. And I don't know if you have the answer to that.
And I can't answer until I talk with the applicants themselves to see what they can and can't do.
And also, there's a couple of key components here, because clearly we can do what the board wants in terms of scrutiny and accountability and disbursement of funds. It's a function of how tight are the mechanisms, and also trying to interpret when somebody says, for example, Art South is requesting funding to continue and expand its mission to contribute to the Homestead's economic redevelopment, and there's a whole kind of generic things that they're looking to do. Are you going to hold them if they meet one of those particular items? Do they have to be all of them? Are you going to disperse the funds monthly? So there's a lot to think through here, and so we can come up with an answer, and we can try to get it to you as quickly as possible. But if you want to do it for this year, there's a lot to think through, and so I would just suggest if that's what you want to do for this year, we're going to need to hold off this item until we can get you some solid answers of how the monitoring and disbursements would work.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
that was going to be my question for Rick. You know, you obviously see where the direction we're taking. How long do you foresee that's going to take? Do you have anything that you've worked on already that's kind of in place, a structure of monitoring these programs? Or is there something in place out there through Miami-Dade County? Is a structure that we could piggyback off to implement within this program?
My first step would be to, one, talk with the applicants. Two, kind of get a little bit more in depth on what the county does and exactly how they monitor, whether it's quarterly, whether it's monthly, and then I have to look at my staff and really see how we can allocate the time that we need to do that. You know, right now we have the residential grants, all three different ones, the commercial grants, and these, and there's a great deal of, you know, just back office work that we have to do to keep these things rolling in a timely fashion.
We're not looking like at a month period or so.
Right.
We're talking about a couple of months, and that's
Right.
what...
So I
don't know. I mean, the truth of the matter is, if we focus on this, we can get you an answer relatively quick in terms of, you know, because the truth of the matter is, the level of staffing on this is going to depend on how much monitoring you're going to do. Is it going to be every month? Is it going to be every 6 months? Is it quarterly? And also, how deep are you going to dig in order to disperse the funds? So we can look at it and come back to you at the next meeting and say, we've got some answers, or it's way too complicated and we need more time. But I don't want to derail your efforts to create a system here if, you know, if there's something quick that we can do over the next month. But on the other hand, I can't promise you that we'll have the perfect system in a month. And I'm hoping if we work real hard, we can come up with at least some suggestions. And then also, we'll have a handle on what kind of staffing needs and/or additional costs. As one of the ideas would be, if the staff can't handle it, obviously to bring out outside help, and then just figure out where that money would come from, and come back to you with that as well.
And I would be okay with if we came to the next CRA meeting, if we hold off just any, you know, because one, yes, we do want to, these folks that apply for these grants are looking to implement stuff for the summer, and so, you know, we want to continue. They're doing a great job in our community. We want to continue to help them. So I'm okay if we hold off to next month on that, because I know that you're going to need some answers. I know that the mom and pop grants that Miami-Dade County does, basically when it goes out, I mean, you fill out your application, you put it in, but afterwards there's no monitoring. I mean, you get, the way they monitor is they say they don't pay you, they pay who you said. If you're going to need a service, advertising, if whatever you're going to put the money to, it's paid to them. So that's one way of controlling that I've seen from that program. But other than that, you know, that we don't submit. You know, they pay the vendors, and then that's it. So.
We also have some experience with monitoring with CDBG funds,
Right.
and so Finance Department will also weigh in with the CRA and try to come up with a structure. That's assuming that you want to wait a month, and we'll do the best that we can. And you may reach a different conclusion afterwards, or not, but at least you'll have additional information.
Mr. Williams, do you
Yes.
want to move for deferral and see if that passes, or?
Yes.
Okay, so you make that motion?
Yeah, I move that we defer the item to the next CRA board meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Nay.
Okay, we've got 4 to 2, 5 to 5. Okay, it's going to hold off for 30 days. Thank you for the people who came
I
in.
just have a comment, Mr. Mayor. We've had meetings about this particular grant, and to me, it's very important to be a part of the takeoff so that there's a smooth landing. So I think it's a bit much to have all these questions and concerns after the fact. I don't see anything wrong with, at this point, dispersing the funds, and it shouldn't be that difficult to incorporate a monitoring piece. But if we have these meetings about this process, public meetings, and then to come and say, well, I have concerns about the disbursement of the funds, when this isn't the first year that the funds have been dispersed like this. I understand that there's always room for improvement, and I get that. But if these applicants applied, they met the criteria, they had their presentations, the board approved these funds, I'm going to respect the recommendations of the board, will hopefully have approved these funds, and then move forward for next year to really tighten up the process. But it's not fair, and after the fact, to delay the process when it could have been rectified beforehand. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Vice Mayor Burgess.
Thank you, Mayor. One of my other concerns is we've delayed this. Now these people may be relying on these funds. Now we've delayed it 30 days, maybe 60 days, and then we're going to give them a criteria to follow. And it could take them 30, 60, 90 days to be able to follow this criteria that we're going to put in place now. And they've already followed what we've asked them to do. And our committee has made their recommendations to us, and now we're pulling everything back. And we may put a burden on some of these people that they can't prove, and they need some of the funds for their programs. So I think it's unfair that we are now asking for this to go forward. Like Patricia, I will respect what the majority wants to do, but I just think it's an unfair burden that we may be putting on them that they may not be able to handle at this time. Some of these people have minimal staff and may not be able to put all the programs that we're going to ask for in place in time for them to get their funds. So I'll leave it at that.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Williams.
Thank you so much. Don't mean to belabor this. I agree with everything that my last two colleagues have said. I simply ask that, number one, it is not that it is not my objective to say no to the grant applicants as it relates to their funding and what they have done. My issue is with how we were facilitating the dollars out to them, and that we had no monitoring process by which we could identify with. And so it is not to deny them anything, and at this present moment, I'm not saying that their applications are not good. I'm not saying their presentations were not well. And my only concern is how we are monitoring the process by which the dollars are given. And yes, this is the third year. Some of these programs are new programs that they are initiating. So some of this is not any direct reflect in what they're trying to do as a mission. But some of these programs are starting up new programs, like the mentoring program, the IT program. Some of these are new initiatives in which they are starting. So it's not like they are, that they're needing to flush this cash in order to be sustainable for the end of the year. I'm simply saying for the next 30 days, if the staff comes back and say we've got a process by which we can go about, and at the next CRA meeting, whether that's 30 days or before 30 days, special call, it doesn't matter to me. I'll be here. So that's my only issue with it. And so I respect everything both the colleagues have said, but I'm just a little concerned with this particular point. And it did not arrive until now.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
Let's move on.
Well, I need one more comment on this one. And that is, I think just to be clear, I agree to the deferral. But my understanding is that you're coming back within 30 days, at least, if not sooner, so that we can make the decision. And nothing, just because I want to see whether or not there are any safeguards that can be put in place without too much of a burden being placed on these not-for-profit organizations. However, if the burden is too great, nothing requires us to approve those additional burdens. We've at least done our due diligence. We've looked at the process. We've let it run its course. But assuming we can do this safely and do it in a way that doesn't affect the not-for-profits, then I think, I'm okay looking at that option or that possibility. But on the other hand, if it is going to be much more burdensome and more so than these not-for-profits had anticipated, then I likely won't support the ultimate decision at that point. So I just want to make sure the record's clear.
Thank you. We've deferred it now. We'll move on. Tab number 7, Car 704, new CRA residential grant program.
At the direction of the Senior Board, during the April 17th workshop, Senior staff is seeking approval of a resolution creating two residential grant programs, the Grant Family Assistance Grant Program and the Multi-Family Residential Grant Program. I don't want to read through the entire memo here. I do want to let you know we changed the multi-family to become a matching program. We incorporated the percentage of the match into the amount of units. So if you have 2 units, it's a $10,000 grant with a 10% match. If 2 to 5 units, it's a $15,000 grant with a 15% match. 5 to 10, $25,000 with a 25% match. And if you have 10 or plus more, we would come directly to the board and a 50% match. And we'd also replace an owner property that sunsets after 5 years.
Okay, I'll move for motion. Move it for approve. Thank you. Second. Okay, we've already got staff, so question from council. Hearing no questions from council, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone in the public that would like to speak on this item, please come to the microphone. Give your name and address for the record, please.
From Terrace. I just want to clarify something that was said at the last meeting about the big LLCs and people behind those big corporations. Well, in this case, it's just me, a single woman, trying to think in my retirement, and I have put all my money and my effort fixing this property. I guess that Mr. Williams remembered that is 520 Southwest from Terrace. I believe that that's your area. And over here, you can see that was a crack house, was a prostitution. The police was going crazy with that property. And now, like in the middle, you can see how the property has changed. The city has been paying about $25,000 in fines, property taxes, and utilities, past due utilities. Also, every permit has been pulled with the city, with paying all the fees, and also the property has been put up to code. So I think I appreciate that you give me the opportunity to just express what I have done with this property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Any further questions from the public? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any final questions from council? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Board Member Maldonado.
Yes.
Board Member Shelley.
Yes.
Board Member Wallman.
Yes.
Board Member Williams.
Yes.
Board Member Fairclough McCormick. Vice Chairman Burgess.
Yes.
Chairman Bateman.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay. Tab 8, card number 705, a new commercial enhancement grant program.
At the direction of the Senior Board, during the April 17th workshop, Senior staff is seeking approval of the resolution creating two new commercial enhancement grant programs, the Site Development Assistance Program and the Business Startup Grant Program. These programs are unchanged from the workshop.
Okay, motion to move it on? Move it?
Second.
Okay. We got staff questions from council. Hearing none, seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Questions from the public? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Final questions from council. Madam Clerk?
Vice Chairman Burgess.
Yes.
Board Member Fairclough McCormick.
Yes.
Board Member Shelley.
Yes.
Board Member Williams.
Yes.
Board Member Maldonado.
Yes.
Board Member Wallman.
Yes.
Chairman Bateman.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Car number 767, New Vision of South Dade request, tab 9, staff report.
Staff is requesting direction for the board in response to revisions of South Dade's request for additional funding for the 2013 unallocated youth event. Revisions is requesting an additional $1,600. Here is included a letter, and I know that Mr. Brown here, if you'd like to ask him any questions.
Okay. Mr. Brown, would you like to come forward? Just give us, we know you, but just give us your address if you would for the record, please.
South Dade Incorporated. I live at 424 Southwest 11th Avenue in Homestead, Florida.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Questions from council, or do you want to give us a little explanation of why you need it?
Again, we held the MLK Youth Concert for Peace, Justice, and Equality, Saturday, January the 12th, beginning at 5 o'clock p.m., almost at 5 o'clock p.m. And I remember that because the power was off on the entire street of Chrome Avenue, and that was bizarre to me, not a good way to start. But in attendance that evening was Councilman Williams, Councilman Patricia Fairclough McCormick, and also Councilman Maldonado. And when I baked the equation for that concert, I did not take into account honorariums to be paid directly to those people who participated in that event. Those were local area school organizations, including South Dade High School Dance Troupe, South Dade Middle School Chorus, the Polly Mays Conservatory of the Arts Chorus, the Young Men's Preparatory Academy Chorus and Jazz Band, and one more, I can't remember what it was, but I did give those invoices to Mr. Amorato. And with that, I'll entertain any of your questions.
Okay, questions or discussions from council? Yes, Ms. Fairclough.
I have a comment and a question. First off, you did a phenomenal job this year. I think this year is the best year that I've seen that you've been facilitating this in the community, so great job. My question is the honorariums. To whom does that go to? Is it to support the transportation to the event or the principal's discretionary account? Where does this money go?
That money is going specifically to those organizations which did the performances. Now, I believe it was 6 organizations. I did drop the invoices for those, and I have, like I said, made those available to Mr. Amorato. Those are going to those schools. They have not been paid yet. They're going to those organizations which specifically performed that day. It's not going to New Visions.
No, I understand it's not going to New Visions. Is it going, what is it paying? An honorarium for coming?
An honorarium for performance.
And as far as the amount, did they give you this after the event was over because you say you didn't?
No. I generated those amounts based primarily on what we pay marching bands and other school organizations to participate in the MLK parade itself. Again, and I thank you, Councilman Fairclough McCormick, as well as Councilman Williams, for all of your help, and Councilman Maldonado, who stood in for Mayor Bateman letter on the engagement that evening. The thing is when I got all this up, and this was the first time we had done the MLK Youth Concert, I just didn't bake all of that into the equation. When we do the parade and the festival, we give all of those schools which participate honorariums, especially the marching bands. And so I thought it only fair to do that now, this time, as well with the MLK Youth Concert. And the figures generated were based on what we pay the marching bands during the parade.
So this wouldn't be new. For the MLK parade, you pay the marching bands an honorarium to participate, and that's fair.
That's correct.
Okay, so you would like to do the same for these ensembles that came to participate in this?
That's correct.
Okay. And how much money did you receive from the CRA this year? Do you have those figures?
Approximately $4,000.
About $4,200.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Any further questions from council? Yes, Ms.
I'm sorry. My mom was in the just so you know, my mother was in the hospital, and that's why I wasn't able to attend. If you didn't get the message, that's why. But I see you're singling out people on the dais, and I just want to make sure. But let me go further. Do we normally pay bands? And I mean, you say you do, but and maybe my educators they do. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was something that was customary. And okay, question answered. I never knew that either.
For transportation, getting to and from events, like if I request a band to come to my school, we have to pay their traveling expenses. So it's custom.
Okay. Answered. Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion?
Just comment.
Yes.
Great job. you know, to see the families out there and the event take off. And again, we're just honoring, you know, we're taking into account that day, that memory, and where we are today. I think it was a great event that you put together. Everyone that was up there, phenomenal job. So just thank you for doing that. It was well received in the community, good turnout, and hopefully we keep seeing these and they keep growing.
Okay, so any further questions? With that said, we're all in favor? Aye. Nays? All right, whatever your additions approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, there was no motion.
I move.
I think I second.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, it was a discussion item, so, you're right. Okay, we've got, last but not least, the CRA 816, discussion of HRB 2006-0103, Seminole Theater.
On March 20th, 2013, council requested staff for resolution HBR 2006-01-03 to the next board meeting for discussion. There's a working memo. I guess I can just begin by the first two paragraphs, and then for you to start the discussion. During the council meeting on March 20th, 2013, council requested staff for resolution HBR 2006-01-03 passed on January 10th, 2006 to the CRA board for discussion. The resolution, I'm not going to say the name again, the resolution stipulated that the CRA would contribute $1.5 million, $100,000 for 15 years of TIP funding to Seminole Cultural Arts Theater, Inc., provided a new amendment to the 1999 management agreement between the city and the Seminole Theater was negotiated and approved. The CRA board minutes reflect that the staff sought county approval for the allocation of TIP funds provided in the resolution. The county did not approve the budget of TIP funds provided for the resolution. The county asserted the such allocation without its express approval by one of the provisions of the 1994 local agreement establishing a Homestead Community Development Agency. Consequently, no new amendment to the 1999 management agreement was presented to the CRA board or the council, and the provisions of the resolution were never executed.
Thank you. Discussion from council.
We all looking at each other.
That's right. I keep making sure that I don't.
You can see.
I look to the right too much.
Yeah.
I'm
Let me thank.
Williams.
Thank you. Seems always the first to start. I don't know if that's good or bad, but let me thank the staff for the follow-up on this research in which I have asked for and for it to be brought back to the CRA board to see where do we go from here. And in my initial response to this, I'm a very big supporter and proponent of the Seminole Theater to make sure that it is realized through its effort and its vision. I believe in it. And I think in that effort to make sure that it is the beacon light, or one of the beacon lights of the downtown area, in which we are so much involved in as it relates to its redevelopment and its enhancement of. And so with that, I've looked over the documents, and I just, I have a couple of questions about some of the, the math in here, but I like to hear. I think the Seminole Theater Board is here, and so I'd like to hear from my other colleagues on their ideas of this.
Okay, and let's include the manager. Would you like to have the floor and lay anything out ahead of time?
No, we'll respond to questions, and we tried to give you as much history as possible, and we're happy to respond to questions.
Okay. Any further questions from council before I open it up to the floor?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Wall.
Unfortunately, that was the meeting I missed, so I didn't hear the discussion. But from what I could gather, Mr. Williams, you were asking the question as to why we didn't follow up on the 2006 amendment. Is that correct? I'm sorry, through the chair.
Yes, please.
You're asking me what my direction was? Or what I'm trying to understand what your question is.
What the discussion was?
In other words,
Seminole Theater made a presentation.
right,
In the presentation that they made, there were statements made, and there were questions that I had in where we go from the Seminole Theater, how we articulate our agreement with them. And so in that discussion, I asked staff to come back and ask the manager and the attorney, when resolutions are done, what are our obligations toward those resolutions? And then since they have not, since we've not moved on it, what was the hesitation of it? And so based on those comments and what I made and feeling sentimental of the board, being directed the city manager to, and what CRA staff, to come back with all the stuff that they needed to in order to facilitate where we are today.
okay. Mayor?
Yes, please.
I hope I accurately projected that right as far as my memory serves me.
I thought it was pretty good. Since I was the only one on the dais in 2006, I really appreciated the thorough work that the CRA and manager staff did on this memo, because it took me back, and if you could see my book, you'll know what I'm talking about. I mean, I was highlighting everything that I could to jog my memory. And from what I can get from this book and the information that was given to us and the memory that I have of that particular evening, was that, and maybe Mr. May might have something different, but from what I remember was that this 2006 amendment to the 1999 agreement was contingent upon the county approving future spending of TIF funds, and if my memory serves me right, the county did not approve that. And Ms. Bell, if you're in the audience, I'm sure you might have something to say about this, but the county did not approve that, and because the county did not approve it, the management agreement was put aside, the amendment to the management agreement. Is that what you have in your documents, Rick?
Yes, the resolution was predicated on an amendment to the existing management agreement approved by the council.
Okay.
Because your agreements with the city of Homestead, not with the CRA. And again, we're putting all of this together.
Right, and that's why I'm trying to remember exactly too. And I did not have time to go back and archive the 2006 meeting.
Right.
I see Mr. Porter's in the audience. Maybe he might remember better than I do. No, but Belle was there, so she might remember. But that was primarily to answer your question that I think you were asking, Mr. Williams, is that why it wasn't acted on, and I believe that's probably what happened. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, that's what it says in the documents, and for what they have given to all of us. And so, I go back to what my initial statement in prefacing all of this is: where do we go from here? Do we go back to the county to relook at the agreement again to see what issues we can work out in order to facilitate that based on the dollars that we give now within what we're responsible for within the management agreement? Most of that goes back into the building itself for insurance, liability, all of those factors, and so I'm saying, I think I'm not speaking, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I'm speaking for myself. I like to see the Seminole Theater realized. Now, we have just, and I don't want to mix this up, but we have just allocated some dollars to a consultant, I think in Texas, to figure out what we can bring to downtown to make downtown should be what it should be. When we have a jewel, a diamond in the rough right here already, that we could put our efforts in and to make sure it is realized and follow through with the commitment, And so that's where I am at this very moment with what my statement is, and in support of the Seminole Theater. So, you know, I like to make sure that, you know, we're here today. Persons who up here are no longer up here. You're the senior member per se up here, Councilwoman Wallman, and so you knew what the, you know, intent of it was. You knew, you know, what the vision of it was, and obviously the vision carried through to a resolution to make it a realization. So how do we, as a body, how do we, with what we want to happen in downtown, how do we come together to make sure that that happens? What mechanisms? Do we go back to the county, as I said before? What mechanisms are there in place to make this a realization?
Mayor, may I follow up on that? And then I'll...
Go ahead, Ms. Palmer.
Just to follow up on Mr. Williams'
Sure.
remarks, you know, I truly have been a hero and thought the Seminole Theater was a hero of the city of Homestead. And Frank, you remember the morning that I facilitated the meeting with Katie Sorensen, and
That's correct.
I asked Katie Sorensen for $1.5 million, and she was able to grant the Seminole Theater through the...
Actually, it was greater than that. It was, I believe it was 3.
3, but she
Yes.
gave us $1 million, correct?
Yes.
Right. She gave us $1 million, and I'll never forget sitting at that breakfast table and begging her, and she did follow through, and
She came through.
and we were very, very happy with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a suggestion. I don't know if this is going to solve the problem, because I would love to see the Seminole Theater come through as well, and you know that. We have $60,000 left over from the roof repair that was done. We allotted $200,000, and it was $140,000 to repair the roof. And it's suggested in this memo from the AMS report, a recommendation, that they do a continued study,
Follow-up.
a follow-up.
Yes.
So it would be my suggestion that we go to the county, see if the county's going to approve the TIF fund expenditure, and with the dais, with my colleagues' recommendation, perhaps take that additional money, that $60,000, and do a study. And I think that would help us, because there's so many questions here, like the endowment income, and the one that's the most important to me that I don't understand is the city support $114,100, which doesn't include the $40,000 that we're obligated to now. And then if the theater, or when the theater is completed, then it goes to $60,000 for 5 years with a chance for renegotiating the management contract. But that $114,000 doesn't, to my knowledge, it doesn't include any of that. And then there's the endowment, there's fundraising, public contributions. You know, there's explanations there, I think, that need to be solved, and I think it would make everybody feel more comfortable, and we could do that with that study. So that's going to be my recommendation, Mayor, and I hope that, you know, my colleagues will agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further comment before I open? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Chair Kaufman-Crump.
I just had a quick question. I am a proponent of the Seminole Theater, and just like Councilman Williams stated, I would like to see it realized as well. I think it's a diamond in the rough in the downtown area, and we really need to come together to determine how we're going to move forward with this, as opposed to all this dancing around. In here, this study from AMS, this was commissioned in 2008.
Yes, it was produced in May of 2008, and we spent quite a bit of time working on this and bringing it to that point. It is the second feasibility study that was produced by AMS. The first was 10 years earlier in 1998. The conclusions of the reports are almost identical.
Just a follow-up question. What if this board decides to send it back to the county to determine whether or not they will approve the TIF funds? What if they don't approve it? Then what? What are the ramifications for that? Just thinking ahead.
Well,
If they don't approve it, then the question is the board willing to fund this project at any level from other sources of funding? And I think one of the reasons that the material is so extensive is you have to, and I've heard you say this before, and we're all big Covey believers here, is begin with the end in mind. If you want a theater, and the original agreement 14 years ago can charge the Seminole Theater Group with the responsibility of rehabbing the theater, opening the theater up, and managing the theater. So if that's still your end in mind, then you first have to ask yourself the question, how much will it cost to finish the theater? There is the low of 3.5 to the high of $6 million. And then there's the question of how much will it cost the Seminole Theater Group to keep the doors open on an annual basis? The AMS study basically says we've seen their pro formas, which estimate their expenses and their revenue projections. Before you move forward, you probably should have somebody look at those revenue projections and figure out how much reasonably can you expect to raise. One of those line items is for the city of $114,000 per year in order for them to keep their doors open. And so as you think through what is your end in mind, you need to think through what your level of commitment is and where those funds are coming from. One position is TIF funds, and without TIF funds, we're not in. One is general fund money, and we're willing to build contribute to building, rehabbing the theater and opening the doors, but we're not necessarily willing to commit on an annual basis to the amount that right now is being asked of you. If you follow the AMS pro forma, it would mean $60,000 a year in a management fee for an operating theater, plus an additional $114,000 a year in financial contribution to the city. And so that's another decision point you'll need to make is, are you in at that level? And if you're not in at that level, have you thought through, are you willing to contribute to opening up a theater, not necessarily knowing whether they can keep the doors open? We know, and I guess I speak from experience because I lived through building a performing arts center in the city of White Plains from scratch. I was involved with every morsel from the plan to opening up the doors to the first 2 years of operations. And so I've lived through it and I've seen my own studies, and in general what they say is that theaters with seats less than 600 seats have a very difficult time keeping their doors open without some subsidy. Now in White Plains, the government decided we want a community theater and we're willing to contribute X number of dollars a year to keep it open. 3 or 4 years later, and while I'm long gone, the elected body then is facing a recession and trying to not have the layoffs and keep police officers on the street, and then there's a big debate about should we be funding a theater. So as you think about spending money to open those doors for the first day, this is likely a long-term commitment. And so, in my opinion, you really need to know what you're getting yourself into before you go one more dollar in, because the truth of the matter is you've gone 14 years so far, you've spent a couple of $1 million so far, and $1.5 million in the CRA resolution will not open your doors, and you still don't have the question answered of how you're going to keep those doors open. So if you're asking me, I think you need to really think through and begin with the end in mind, assessing your level of commitment and making sure that you have the right information to make the decision.
I'd like to interject there. This is a complex issue. Essentially what you have in the memorandum that has been conveyed to you are two issues. The first is the pledge which was made to the Seminole Theater in the form of a resolution in 2006. That is where the TIF funds move into play. And from what I understand by reading these emails and Mr. Honorato's report, that there was some discussion at the administrative level of the use of those TIF funds to pay for that pledge. The second issue is, as Mr. Gretzis has most eloquently enunciated, is the long-term status of the theater. But Councilman Faircloth, your specific question about TIF funds relates specifically to the pledge, and that's why we're here this evening. The issue becomes, at least in my mind, what formal process took place at the county level by the county commission or somebody beneath them authorized to make that decision to approve or to disapprove the pledge that was proffered to the Seminole Theater by the city of Homestead. I need to make this clear again. You have two issues. We are here this evening because of the resolution that is on the agenda, and that is specifically where the TIF funds come into play. The second issue, which you've just been exposed to by the city manager, is the long-term play of the Seminole Theater.
And one piece of that I can answer for you is in terms of the formalized process back in 2009. Recognize a couple of things, both at the city CRA level and the county level. There's a lot of institutional memory that's done. But the one piece of evidence that we have of some formalized process is an email, because apparently at the time, county auditors were questioning why is it that, and I'll read you the email. It basically says, and this is from the county auditing staff, Miami-Dade County Audit Management Services is currently conducting an audit of the City of Homestead CRA. Currently, I am reviewing the Seminole Theater TIF funding and came across a resolution passed by the Homestead CRA Board approving $1.5 million over 15 years to the Seminole Cultural Arts Theater. Mr. Dan Wick, acting executive of the CRA, stated that the county will not approve a 15-year commitment in the CRA budget utilizing TIF dollars. Could you please provide more detail as to why the county will not approve this commitment over the 15-year period? Any documentation or communications that the funding would, why this funding would not be approved would be greatly appreciated. So that's county audit staff to county CRA staff, and their response was, and this is from the Office of Strategic Business Management, in response to your request for clarification as to why the county will not approve a 15-year commitment in the Homestead CRA budget utilizing TIF dollars, please note that the CRA's interlocal agreement with Miami-Dade County requires that the CRA submit a budget to the county on an annual basis, Section 2B, page 3. The 15-year commitment proposed by the CRA was a commitment toward a long-term operational expenditure and does not meet the interlocal agreement requirement to submit an annual budget for county review approval. Attached, please find a copy of the interlocal agreement. Let me know if this suffices or if there's anything else that you may need. Thank you. And so that's the 09 evidence that we have. We called county staff just to understand where are they today, and their answer was anything that you do to try to implement this resolution would require county approval. So that's pretty much where we're at this point.
Mr. Gretzis, I agree it does require county approval, and in the email that you just referenced, you are relying upon a statement by Dan Wick. Do you have any evidence? Do you have anything written from the county or from Mr. Wick that supports Mr. Wick's reference in that email?
No, the only thing we know is that a staff member, which is the county personnel, is basically explaining to the county auditor why the county rejected the request, and the county staff person's response was because it violates the interlocal agreement. So our question was, well, where is the county staff 5 years later? And so keep this in mind. An interlocal agreement is between the county and the CRA, or is it the city? And meanwhile, that's the Board of County Commissioners. So when the current county staff says, well, it requires county approval, there's plenty of things that an elected body can do, assuming that they want to address this issue. But in terms of the history was in 2009, the county staff kicked us out saying it didn't comply with the interlocal agreement.
Mr. Chair, there are a couple of things I'd like to say in regard to this. One is that we as a board were never informed of this. I am I am not aware of any of this communication. That's the first point. I think the second point is that we were actively involved in negotiations with the city. And in fact, developed an amendment to the agreement and sent that agreement to the law department at some point. Again, it's been so long, so many years have passed. But we have never been informed of this. But I would like to add, and I would like to suggest that if there is still an avenue open to approach the county as a formal body to approve or disapprove this, then I believe that we should do so. Because it seems to me, from what I've heard, that the door may be still open. And again, this was something that was proffered to us in 2005 at a fundraiser we had. It was again formalized as a resolution in 2006. We did not ask for this. As a condition, as I recall, very specifically, the management agreement was the primary condition. I seem to recall Councilman Rosner being the one that requested this from the dais. Now, the management agreement was done. We went through extensive negotiations with CRA, which is all documented. What I seem to recall is this document was sent to the law department. Very shortly thereafter, the current CRA director, the CRA director at that time, was fired, and then that's the last we heard of this. I would be remiss in my responsibilities if I did not question the status of this, because it obviously has import for the Seminole Theater.
Right, and we can't, like I disclosed at the very beginning of this, the institutional memory is gone, so the only documentation we have is the emails that I just read, and then also, it's pretty clear that there was some negotiations of an agreement between the city and the Seminole Theater Group.
That's correct.
But then everything came to a halt after the county rejected this thing. And
Mr. Gratsis, that is not my recollection, because I was never party to those discussions or that information. What occurred with us is that we were in good faith negotiations with the city. We went back and forth. A document was prepared, from what I understand.
how would you account, though, for that email between county staff?
I can't address that, Mr. Gratsis. I'm completely unaware of it until I observed your document on Friday.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, but then I'd like to make a comment.
I think both sides, listen, Mr. Mayor, I commend you and your entire board. You have hung on, how many years?
It's been a long time.
I don't know, give me a number.
Can't.
It's incredible.
I've been on the board since 2001.
I admire your drive and tenacity and all those great things. The manager brings some very good issues, very good points to the table. And you bring some very good points to the table. What this board needs to do, it's all down to dollars and cents. Simple as that. I mean, I had the manager run some numbers. Regardless of the 174, if we got the county to bless the 174 tomorrow, the 114 and the 60 operating cost, we're just going to go from 40 to 60, total of 174, the numbers still don't work. So what this council needs to decide, it's our building. Do we finish the building? Do we step up to the plate and finish the building? Our bonding capacity is AAA plus. We could bond it. We could pay for it. We could finish that building. But without us finishing that building, I don't see it working. Because to borrow the money, the $3.5 million, it doesn't work in your numbers.
Well, the initial numbers obviously did not include what you now refer to as debt.
How do we get to the end? As we said, we want to see the end in sight.
If I could make a suggestion, this pro forma was essentially based upon our fundraising activities, which we are heavily involved in at this point. We realize the private sector has limitations, so we are pursuing private foundations and corporations.
But I think that should go to your operating expenses. I really
No, that's capital.
Well, I'm saying different. I say we own the building. We need to step up and finish the building.
Well, I would applaud that, Mr. Chair.
Listen, that should be our job. I believe that. And then you should have the recurring revenue in place to show us, to show this board that, look, if we finish the building, you can sustain it. There is recurring revenue that you've got the numbers in place that'll finish this building.
I would, I believe, comply with Councilman Waldman's suggestion.
And that's what's giving you the 170.
But I think that perhaps this needs to be re-examined in more detail. I don't believe that I should be the one to make those changes to the consultant's pro forma. I can very easily do so. I'm very adept at doing those things, as you know.
I'm floating this so that the council tonight decides whether we finish the building, whether it's through CRA, or whether it's through bonds, whether it's through
Okay.
the
Sure.
financial income we have in the bank. There's something we need to come up with. We either vote it up, we vote it down, and we do something with the building, because it's not fair to you and your board to continue to keep throwing out that little bit of bait or the promise that was made back in '06 or whatever it was. I mean, we need to step up as a board and make a decision. Vote it up, vote it down to finish the building. Finish the building, you show us how you're going to, with the 174 in place that we originally promised, if the county will allow us to do that. And you figure out how it's going to work after that.
Mayor?
You do the performance. Yes,
Sure.
Mr. Williams.
Let me make sure I hear you correctly. Are you saying that for the city to take its own building and to fix it up to what the vision should be?
Yes, this was done in Fort Pierce. They spent $12 million of CRA money. $12 million. And it's a big giant plaque out front. CRA, $12 million. Bank of America, $1 million. They did the job. They did a great job. I don't know if it carries its own weight, but I can tell you that they built the building. CRA built it. They didn't spend no $3 million. They spent $12 million. I brought those numbers back to George. Did I not, George? I took a picture of the plaque and brought the picture back to him, and a picture of the building. And I can tell you, we have far more traffic downtown than Fort Pierce does.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, they have Tri-County, and from 3 counties they come and support it. And I believe once it's done, we'll have, from, you know, Pinecrest to the Florida Keys, will be coming to see the shows and the entertainment that we have at this theater. And we've got to also factor in what it's going to do for our youth and for our high schools and for our children, you know, in the form of you know, arts. Simple as that. So I don't see $3.5 million, you know, that far away. I just don't see it. We looked at it a year ago. We looked at it when we looked at all the projects for CRA that are in this book tonight, right down to the new parking lot we're putting in, to the Washington Avenue.
Well, we just voted that down.
You know, but don't pick on last. I gave you 3 items.
Well, I have no problem in supporting that effort, and also for the manager to bring back some numbers and some creative financing ways to do that. I'm geared for that, because you know, 12 years, however many years it has been, it's just too long.
It's embarrassing.
And you know, when I took a tour in there, you know, you can see the endless possibilities that it has, and it just needs to be finished. Now, whatever financial, you know, economics that we can come up with, that it opens, it's our building. As a matter of fact, the $200,000 we gave them for the roof, it was really the city's responsibility to put the roof on. They really shouldn't even been in that $200,000 category that we allocated to them. It's really the city's building, and the agreement states that any roofing problem the city is responsible for. Just thought I'd throw that out there, because I do read. But I think at some point, you know, that I'm in favor of what you have just said, Mayor, and to perhaps give the staff some direction to come back with some creative financing ways in order for us to accomplish this.
Okay, Mr. Shelley, I'm sorry, I passed it.
No, now I'm confused, because for the purposes of the CRA meeting today, we were discussing the resolution. So I agree that we
still need it. We still need the resolution.
Well, what I'm saying for the resolution, there was a couple of things that were brought up. One was the concept of going through the AMS study, which was recommended in this, I guess, in the prior study, which I think is good. I think we need numbers. The more numbers, the better. However, I don't want to see us spend $60,000 on the study to ultimately have the county determine that they won't honor the resolution. Now we spent $60,000, we have a study that nothing's going to go forward. So I think step one is, for purposes of dealing with this resolution tonight, and as far as the CRA board goes, you know, let's get a definitive answer from the county if one can be given, because otherwise there's no point for us discussing this resolution any further, because the county ultimately makes this decision. They ultimately determine whether or not this resolution, you know, is going to go forward. So I think step one is, for purposes of dealing with this resolution tonight, and as far as the CRA board goes, you know, let's get a definitive answer from the county if one can be given, because otherwise there's no point for us discussing this resolution any further, because the county ultimately makes this decision. They ultimately determine whether or not this resolution whether we support it or don't support it, or whether we go forward or don't go forward, the county ultimately makes that decision. So I think it's premature for us to have that discussion tonight about this resolution until the county weighs in on it. Now, if the county comes back and says, yes, we can do this, and they would honor this resolution, now we have a debate to be had, as for purposes of the CRA, to determine whether or not these monies in this resolution and any amendment to the management agreement, how that's all going to shape out going forward. So I think at that point in time, that would be that discussion. Now, as far as the other things that we've been discussed, I'm supportive of the Seminole Theater as well. I think it'd be great to get that open. I think it'd be great to move forward with that. But that discussion really needs to be had at a council meeting, because unless there's enough CRA monies to fund this whole thing, which I haven't seen, I don't think we have any monies much left, then ultimately the city council is the right decision. It's going to have to come from the general fund. Bonding comes from the general fund. It's going to come from the city as a whole. So I think there needs to be discussion at that level and numbers produced and see where we all stand. I don't know that I support going out for the bond. I think there's a lot of other major projects at this point that might need bonding over this one. However, I'm willing to look at everything. I'm willing to look at the numbers. I'm willing to see how things shake out. And I'll make my decision at that point in time. But I think for purposes of tonight, for this CRA meeting, it's the resolution. And so my position on the resolution is, until I get a definitive yes or no from the county, there's really not much more for me to make a decision on.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wall.
If I didn't make myself clear before, I just want to make sure that I was clear, and I think Mr. May knew that I was clear about going to the county first and getting the approval, and there is a door open, I think we both feel that there could be, and then doing a study. But I caution us right now, because I know there's no money in the CRA to provide the $3.5 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I caution you right now, we're just going into the budget process, and I think this budget is going to be really, really tough this year.
Time to discuss it.
Well, it might be a good
really
time to
is.
discuss it, but it could be a bad thing too, because when we start getting into the budget cycle and we start seeing, the ad valorem taxes and all the things that have come down, and how we're going to have to keep our services and keep our police force intact and keep everything the same. So I agree with Mr. May that if we get a study, then the study could at least help us determine how we're going to stay open, how the theater is going to stay open and operate. And we've had thousands of conversations about this, Frank, and
Yes.
I want this as bad as you do. You know that.
Absolutely.
But we have to make sure that we're going to be able to operate, and we have to know that we're going to have people that are going to come, and we have to know where they're going to park. So that's something that the study, I think, can enable us. And again, the study after going forward to the county, and I'm sure our staff will help you, Frank, get as much information as we have on records to take with you to the county, and I'm sure Rick, who's expecting a baby any moment, his wife is, I was surprised to see him here tonight, will be with you at the county level as well. So, but as far as just taking that money out of the general fund until we know how we're going to operate and getting some answers to some of these figures, I think that's a smart way to go.
Well, it certainly would not be my intent to place any financial burden upon the city
I know that.
because of our activities. And I think I've demonstrated that previously in one large grant that I actually asked for rescission for, because I realized it would have an adverse impact on the city's financial condition. That simply is not our intent.
I know.
And I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, but let's wrap this up. We're going to move forward with what was really intended here tonight. And I threw that out only knowing that this was not the proper forum, but I'm tired of hearing about it.
I am
And we need to move forward.
Yeah,
I am too.
Vote it down, and I think you got 4 votes up here to vote it out. So tonight we're going to vote the issue that's before us. We're going to come back, whether they say yes or no, and I pray they say yes. And you're going to go redo your numbers and figure it all out.
Good.
We're going to vote it up yes or no.
Excellent.
We're going to vote this thing at a council meeting. Simple as that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Do we have a motion to?
I move it.
Okay, second.
The motion?
The motion is to move forward to the county. You want to state it?
Yeah, I move that we move forward with the county on asking them. Let me finish. I'm getting there. My motion is to move forward with the county on the HRB 2006-01-03 resolution with the status of where the county agreed to look at the interlocal agreement.
I hope that was it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, let's just do a roll call.
I hate to do this, but I just wanted to clarify the motion. So what we are asking for then...
What do you want right now?
No, I just want to make sure, because I'm clear that I want an answer from the county.
Right.
I want the county to tell us, will they or will they not honor the resolution? And then that's as far as I want this motion to go, because then I want to be able to make the determination on the resolution, on the management agreement, everything else thereafter.
That's it.
So as long as we're clear on that,
We're clear.
I'm okay. Let's move forward.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Yes.
Board Member Williams?
Yes.
Board Member Maldonado?
Yes.
Board Member Wallman?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Burgess?
Yes.
Board Member Fairclough McCormick?
Yes.
Chairman Bateman?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And before we adjourn, in case she leaves, have we recognized County Commissioner Linda Bell? County Commissioner Linda.
I don't want you to leave our county, and I should introduce you.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Thank you. Second? Second. All right, all in favor? All right. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Let the city clerk recalculate her computers.
Hey, Rick, if you need those golf clubs dusted off in the next couple of years, let me know.